Day 301 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine today. And as always, I'll start off with those Russian military losses, so as of the 21st of December, which, as you can see at a glance, it looks like Russia is going to hit 100k before Bitcoin does. So Russia is currently sitting on 99,740 Russian military personnel losses. So that's an additional 510 as of today, which in all probability suggests that it will hit 100k tomorrow. It's, truly a nail in the coffin. No pun intended. Then we'll look at some of the Russian military hardware losses in the last day. So 7 tanks, that's a good number there. 5 ACVs, 12 artillery, even a jet and a helicopter as well. So all in all, quite a devastating day for the Russian army. Then we'll move back across to the map today, where we'll start out in Russia once again, where Russia is certainly on fire right now. So today we'll start out in the Russian Oblast of Bryansk, where a substation was attacked by an unidentified object, likely a drone, and a freeze frame will show you it has a drone-like shape or quality to it. Then far away in Shevesha, so that is quite a few oblasts deep if I can find it. There it is, all the way hiding over there. So a gas pipeline exploded in Shevesha. And notice this footage is a little bit odd. Multiple people seem to be walking into the direction of the explosion, kind of like a moth to the flame. But interestingly, it's a gas pipeline that leads gas to Europe via Ukraine. So food for thought, that one. Then we'll move across to the Belgorod region in the Belgorod Oblast, still again in Russia, where there was a fire at an electrical substation here as well. So all in all, quite the fiery day as far as Russia's motherland is concerned. And then just lastly, for my note on the Russian territory today, there's been some footage showing Russia moving military equipment from far east in Russia headed in the direction of Ukraine. Now, they've already done this a few times before, effectively resupplying themselves. And if they keep it up at this rate, Russia may not even have any capability to protect itself from any land-based invasions on that side of their country one day from another nation. And I'm not mentioning any names. But to me, I'd say this is what a country depleting its military force looks like. So a good army will have decent defensive and offensive hardware capabilities. A basic army will have some mostly defensive hardware capabilities. Then there's Russia, a class unto itself that may have some really glaringly obvious gaps in its defensive capabilities down the line. Then we'll move into Ukraine, where we'll take a look at Kyiv for a moment, the capital. So internet connectivity and power supply remains significantly diminished in and around the Kyiv capital after the Russian kamikaze UAV drone strikes on the 19th of December, just a couple of days ago, which happened to target the energy infrastructure. And authorities report capacity is down to 50% now, but energy crews are working tirelessly to get it back to higher capacity again, basically. Then we'll move across to the Donbas for a moment. A little bit less happening here today, although one very interesting thing of note. But I'll start out a little bit in the north, so in the Crimea area, where Russian forces are said to be performing further retreats around the forest area of Crimea. So this is the southwesterly direction. Now we are waiting for confirmation on this one, but this information would be consistent with recent Ukrainian advances in this region over the past 48 hours. And if I was to have a look at the movement on the map, you can see certainly an easterly push from the Ukrainian forces there. Then I'll move down for a moment to, you may have heard of this settlement before, heavily contested, Yakovlivka. So right around here, Russian units continue to take huge losses on frontal assaults around this settlement, as the Ukrainian armed forces seem to have this particular area down to an art right now. So those UA forces are responding quite powerfully and systematically. Then we'll move across down to Bakhmut, where President Zelensky has visited the front line, where truly the heaviest fighting is currently taking place. Which gets me to thinking, I can't remember when Putin visited the front lines, can you? Although in a bizarre twist of events, the Kremlin spokesperson Peskov reported that Putin did, or allegedly, visited the Donbas front very recently. And I mean, we have seen no evidence of this. My guess is that as soon as Peskov got wind of Zelensky visiting his troops at the front line today, Peskov quickly tried to come up with something similar in response. Which actually reminds me of this footage I showed you guys just a couple of days ago. So Russian media produced this lovely piece of footage announcing Russian Defense Minister Shoigu, who was said to be at, quote, advanced frontline positions at the war in Ukraine. And it's actually since been proven that he was 50 miles or about 80 kilometers from the actual front line. And on top of that, obviously just high in the sky. Then we'll move down a little bit to the southern Donbas for a moment. So we have some news or information at least about partisan groups in Mariupol that have reportedly set alight a Russian base. Now, Mariupol, again, it is part of the Donbas, technically. It's the Donetsk Oblast, more technically or specifically. And news like this does tend to make sense. This location, Mariupol, is single-handedly probably the most ill-treated city and group of people from their Russian occupiers in this war so far. Then we'll move across momentarily to the Kherson region. So heavy shelling continues in liberated Kherson. Even an Italian journalist was hit by Russia's indiscriminate shelling. Otherwise, nothing particularly of note on the front line here for the day. Then we'll move across to some news for today. So the US Capitol Hill is preparing to host Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky today. So Zelensky's visit to Washington will be his first visit abroad after the war with Russia broke out earlier this year. And so the Ukrainian president is expected to visit the US President Biden and the US Congress. And this visit all comes on the back of the US preparing to send its own Patriot surface-to-air missile systems to deploy in Ukraine after some initial training on the systems. Now, this visit is quite symbolic, really. So the president of the defending country against Russian aggression, which is something of a wider geopolitical flashpoint, right as the Ukrainian delegation visits into the US to meet its single largest ally. And I tell you what, the internet trolls are going to be really attempting to put a different spin or narrative on this meeting. But as part of the meeting, I'm sure there will be a request or at least a conversation about the supply of ATACMS missiles to Ukraine. And for those of you that don't know, these ATACMS missiles are basically the HIMARS system missiles on steroids. So they are still surface-to-air missiles. Surface-to-surface missiles, these ones. And have a range of up to 180 miles or about 300 kilometers. And bear in mind, Ukraine's current deployment of HIMARS missiles only have a range of about 55 miles or 88 kilometers. And that alone has been quite the game changer, changing the balance of power in this war. So ATACMS could really change the game, full stop. Then in some other news, France handed over 2 extra Crotale NG short-range air defense batteries to Ukraine. This brings the total to 4 now, and of particular interest to these ones is the -NG suffix, which simply stands for new generation. So in other words, more modernized NATO air defense variants, which is always good to see. Just keep them coming, international community. Then in a bit of a funny to round it all off for today, it's Wednesday, so generally my shortest videos if I do record on a Wednesday. So in this video, so this is a Russian ad playing on Russian TV, which is advertising to young Russian men to enlist for service to fight in the war in Ukraine. So it starts out with an older retired Russian man who is at a grocery store realizing he can't afford much there, which is undoubtedly a reality faced by many Russian civilians now due to Putin single-handedly crippling the Russian economy, causing skyrocketing inflation for everyday items over there. Anyway, so the retiree goes home, then prepares his car for sale to make some money. Then a prospective buyer comes along, but only offers him half of what he needs. Then the son shows up and intervenes, and he's also donned in some military garbs. They're green, so not exactly good winter camouflage. But anyway, the son proceeds to stop the car sale, and then he goes on to say to his father, quote, "Father, I signed a contract. Now we are surely going to be okay." No, you're surely not going to be okay. There's a high likelihood, first of all, that you won't get paid based on everything I've seen. And for the absolutely the best case scenario is that he comes home alive but wounded. So all of these types of adverts are in an attempt for Russia to milk out the very last remaining volunteers for the war. And the resource of willing Russian civilian participants has been severely depleted by this stage in the war. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Yeah, always, like I said before, a little bit of a quieter, shorter one, I should say. And yeah, but I do appreciate all of your support, all of your time, all of your comments and likes, shares and subscriptions. And yeah, I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.